Hello and welcome to Political Quickie, your political show that subjectively discusses current affairs in South Africa and all around the world. My name is Mapasika Murwa. A very clever ANC member, Tabang Sedona, has handed himself over to the police after he assaulted a woman at the BLF and Zuma supporters protest Tule House yesterday. So this incident happened while a police officer was standing on the side and watching the whole thing. So my initial reaction was like, what is going on? I was horrified. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then my mind switched to, it was a protest. I mean, the BLF protested knowing that they were not welcome at Lutuli House, that their protest was illegal. And so they knew that they would not be received with open arms. And, immediately after that, I just thought to myself, the fact that I can even justify that assault by saying that this is a protest that is illegal, is a sign that perhaps we are normalizing violence, within protests in South Africa right now. There has been a call to not normalize violence, with the EFF protesting to H&M, with, just the protests that have been going on in the country, called not to normalize it. So it reminded me a little bit of the Marikana massacre, how that was an illegal protest, and the measure in which the authorities took, which were above and beyond, which were more than what was needed to actually settle the dispute and, get everyone relaxed and under control. So I'm wondering, what happened yesterday, is that incident a reflection of South African men, or is that a reflection of us normalizing violence within our protests and within our culture in general? And I think it's the latter. I think we're just normalizing violence in our culture in general. And that's absolutely unacceptable, and we just need to check ourselves. Moving on to other news, however, the leader of the opposition in Kenya, Raila Odinga, has inaugurated himself as president of Kenya. It's a very interesting story because Kenya does have a president already, Uhuru Kenyatta. So this comes after, the very long saga that's been going on. So last year, Kenya had an election. In August, the courts then said no, because of the irregularities around the outcome of the elections, we are going to rerun these elections in October. And so they did, and Uhuru Kenyatta once again bagged the seat of presidency. So Raila Odinga was like, deuces, I do not recognize him. I am boycotting the outcome of these elections. And so he has inaugurated himself, I think, more as a symbol that he does not recognize Uhuru Kenyatta's presidency. This is not, however, a coup, because he didn't overthrow him. But however, the government is calling this treason. So I think the thing to note from this is that there is this, air in the air that a lot of people are taking the stand to oppose corrupt leaders. And whether or not that opposition of those leaders is the right leadership that we can look to is a debate in itself. But the fact that a lot of people are saying no to corruption and are seeing that this is unacceptable, we can't just stand and do nothing, that in itself is amazing. I mean, you look at South Korea, you look at the US, you look at Kenya, you look at South Africa, literally almost every country in the world are taking a stand against corruption. And I think, that's worth applauding, even when we swear ourselves in as presidents. Yes, moving on to a brand new series where we're talking self-reliance. We're trying to figure out how we as young people can figure out a way to make Africa a superpower that is, of course, developed without the help of government. Yes, so responsibility on us young people. The first thing that came to mind was responsibility. That's basically the first thing for me. I think that we need to, accept the facts for what they are. Yes, history has not dealt us a good hand. Yes, there's systematic racism. But we need to take responsibility in the sense that, okay, that has happened, that some of that is still happening to a large extent, but we are taking a stand and we are taking the responsibility by saying we are not victims, and so we will act and we will turn all of this around. The second thing would be to intentionally educate ourselves about consciousness. I think if there is, a higher level of consciousness where we're not constantly compulsive thinkers, but we are present in every single moment, that in itself just releases, a lot of anxiety about the future and a lot of anxiety about the past. It's been reported over and over again about how we are the most depressed and distraught generation in history. And so also something like TD Jake said about how, we are a very busy generation, and so we're not productive. Being busy does not necessarily mean we are productive. So if we could just center ourselves and silence ourselves, if we could be conscious and present in the moment, then there would be no need to constantly be looking for things to fill in that void that we feel. And I think, that depression stems a lot from overthinking. You're constantly thinking. The situation is as it is. The problem and the negative emotions come from your thoughts about that certain situation. And so if we could learn to just be conscious, that would, we could not be depressed, we could be at peace, and we could be joyous, and we could move on to what's really, really important. The next thing to do would be to educate ourselves on finances. We've had this conversation before about how, every time a majority of black people have money, a majority of Africans, the first thing they want to do is buy something from the West, whether it's Versace's, Gucci, etc. You don't keep the money within your community, and that's what's killing us business-wise. When we don't support black businesses, that's the problem. So we need to learn about finances. What are assets? We need to learn that assets are not our houses or our cars, but assets are things that bring in income. So we need to read Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. We need to read The Capitalist Nigger. So we need to educate ourselves on finances and look at people who've actually been successful financially. For instance, Jews. What are Jews doing that's right that we have not been doing in terms of finances? Next thing to do would be to learn from our enemies. Yeah, the people who have mistreated us in the past and, have contributed a lot to this hand that we've been dealt. We need to learn, what did they do right? What were they able to do right, especially economically, that we can learn from them. We need to swallow our pride. We need to get over their emotions. I mean, it's crazy, but we need to look at them and be like, okay, so what can work, and use that for good. From there, we could stop being consumers and start being producers. You look at how, 10 billion rands every single month from government to South African people is given in grants. And most of that money goes to ShopRite, to Pick and Pay, to basically white monopoly capital. So imagine if there was a black-owned supermarket where that money flows from government straight into the community. So we really need to think about these things of, okay, where are, the holes in our system that we can fill? And also, black businesses just need to learn as well to provide excellent service. Like, how do we support you if your service is not excellent? Like, you think of a spaza shop in the hood, and how the difference is between, a Somali spaza shop and a South African spaza shop. South African spaza shops, most of them, the service is terrible. The stuff is overpriced. They always take longer to attend to you. And then you've got Somali spaza shops where you walk in and you know what? It's just all good. Like, the service is right there and there. So we need to figure out how to provide superior service, and we also need to intentionally support black-owned businesses so that our communities can thrive, so that we can create employment. Another thing that we seriously need to do is that Africa needs to work together, right? before we can look outside of Africa in terms of us wanting to buy things, we need to look at what our brothers and sisters selling and buy there first. We're also, in terms of trade, when we trade with other continents, we need to go as a group. Imagine that. Like, imagine if we could come together and decide, okay, this is how we want to trade. These are the trade regulations we want to have. These are the prices we want to pay. These are the prices we want to be paid for our stuff. That would actually go very far, because then, we're not being infiltrated from many sides, but we actually, a group, and we're going in together, and there's unity within Africa. Another thing is we could actually start selling our mineral resources at world market prices. I mean, it's ridiculous that we have the actual gold reserves, we have the diamonds, we have the natural resources, but someone else produces them on our behalf and they sell them back to us at such ridiculous prices. We need to look at that. Why is it that, Africans are not technologically advanced? Why the hell is that? So we need to figure that crap out before we could even, sell our stuff to everyone else, and figure out, why aren't we producing this stuff? Why aren't we manufacturing this stuff? And then be technologically advanced. And then if we are going to sell our mineral resources, sell that at world market prices. The last thing would be that we need to become political leaders. I mean, we love, our political leaders who have fought for our freedom. We appreciate you. Thank you very much. It was awesome. But I think now it's our turn. We need to take the responsibility. We need to be governing. And in that same instance, we need to reduce the power of, government. We need to, in a sense that the people need to be the economy. The people need to have the power. In the sense that we socialize banks, we socialize mines, where the people are the ones in control economically. And if people are owning banks and mines, etc., then there might not be, actually I don't think there would be a need for grants. Then the government would cut the grants. Then the government will also be able to decrease taxes to encourage businesses to go in. So once they have no need for grants, they have no need for more taxes. So that would be a very interesting situation that would go on. Yeah. That was Political Quickie, and my take on what needs to be done, what we need to do from tomorrow. From tomorrow, we can be conscious tomorrow. We can become political leaders from tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? We need to take a stand. We can become producers tomorrow. We need to take a stand and take responsibility and really build this continent, and not look to the West, and not look to China, and not look to Korea and say, we need your help. Build the headquarters of our African Union. You know what I mean? So we need to become really responsible and take responsibility for our own flippin' continent. Yeah. So that was Political Quickie. I love you guys. Use your talents to serve humanity. I am sorry for the darkness. Oh my, like it just got dark all of a sudden. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'll see you guys next week. Subscribe to the show, and yeah, see you next week.